Hello, my lovely child of the internet. It is I, Multi126789, other known as Multi-Man, and welcome, because we are here discussing Sonic, Frontiers, and Sonic as a character franchise. So, I wasn't expecting this because, I wasn't thinking about this when I was playing the game back in November, but apparently Sonic team decided we're dropping DLC, free DLC for this game for the next entire year of 2023. So yeah, I was thinking of a video idea for what I wanted to do, talking about Forces some more, but I guess it just kind of came to me after I saw this and I already wrote some stuff down. So yeah, welcome to the video where we're going to be talking about all of the Sonic characters that at this point now will be canonally playable in this modern age of Sonic games. And we're going to talk about abilities and giving them new things to be able to do stuff in the future games. Now, again, this is all just coming from somebody who both enjoys a lot of Sonic games and says, hey, Sega doesn't need to do this, but I think it would be a good change, and I think that if you can create a system that works and that is balanced pretty well around these, I think being able to add this extra flow to these characters could make playing them more fun and unique, and allow them to have some strategy of being like having more motivation to play different characters instead of them being like, okay, Sonic, but he can do X, Y, or Z, right? So let's go ahead and begin. Now, going to Sonic the Hedgehog, let's be honest here. Sonic has gotten so many different moves or upgrades and things that he has done over the years that basically you would think, wow, what could you possibly give Sonic the Hedgehog in a new, arcade-like platforming game that he already doesn't have? We already know that he has, boosting and dashing and, having abilities to, go at an even faster pace and stuff. But, I think one of the main things that hold Sonic back in a lot of ways is automation. Not because it's bad per se, but because there's no way to help Sonic's automation other than with dash pads, springs, boosters, and all this other things. So I was trying to develop something in my head, being like, what could be a thing that Sonic could have that could be really cool, that could implement a way for you to not only maintain his max speed at all times, but also be able to help players make sharper turns, be able to make more dangerous or more risky risk and reward movement options, while also just be able to maintain his speed without having to be assisted by automation. But that's when it hit me. Speed shift. Now, speed shift is a thing because now in modern Sonic games, they're starting to finally warm up to using other buttons, other action buttons in their Sonic games, which is really nice. If you've seen Sonic Frontiers, I don't have to really explain it. They actually use quite a few of the actual buttons on the controller, which is insane because as somebody who likes Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, I was like, I don't think they'll ever go to a more robust system where they actually take, all of the concepts and buttons that is on the controller instead of just limiting it to only 2 actions. But no, with the speed shift ability, okay? So here, let's put this in perspective. So let's say you're doing a stage and you're getting to this point where, you're using your boost, you're running really fast, and then you realize you're about to hit this big wall that's gonna deter you from going straight ahead. Now, in normal circumstances, there would be an automated boost pad section that would then turn Sonic in the right direction of where he needs to go. But with speed shift, it would use the L or R button or the ZL or ZL or ZR button to switch to move Sonic in that direction. So what would happen with basically as he's running over to where this, instance of the wall is, if you hold the ZL button, he would start going into a drift animation that would slow down time, and then his turning ability would sharpen greatly, but can't keep all of his momentum and speed. Now, I know I just made like the most miracle working around thing I've ever said, but this would drastically make more levels with Sonic the Hedgehog not be as automated as it could be. Having the ability to hold the LR or the ZL or the ZR button to be able to do a speed shift into these different corners or different areas where you would have to be automated away from, so you didn't make a mistake and maybe fall off a cliff or needed to not just run into a wall, would be really good, because again, all that it would do would be slow down the actual in-game timer and everything around the character, while making the player be able to hold that button to then be able to drift, and then using the stick you can alter the way that he's going to direct himself after you kept holding that button for that direction. Which also goes into another thing that I wanted to do for Sonic, which they kind of touched on in Sonic Frontiers, but they didn't really realize it as much as I would hope. But if they were to make a new 3D platforming-based Sonic game, like 100% just platforming and nothing else, wall dash. So now we know we have the drop dash where, if you jump in the air and then you jump, and if you hold the jump button again, you drop dash, right? So the wall dash is basically the same thing like we had in Sonic Frontiers, but it works almost on every surface. So basically, if you're running at a certain amount of speed, or using the speed shift to then use your momentum out of a jump to carry yourself, you could be able to press a different action button when jumping into a wall when you're at a certain speed, and then Sonic will curl up into a ball and instantly go up whatever ledge or side that he jumps on. Now, again, you may be wondering, oh, well, how is this supposed to technically work on a technical level? Is it just every wall? And for, yes, the most part, I would think it'd be every wall. Any flat surface wall, he could do that on. You could also jump off of it by pressing the jump button immediately after you start going up the wall. You can continue to walk up a wall if it doesn't have a ledge above it. So he just instantly, after he does a wall dash off of a wall and goes all the way up. He goes into his free fall animation where he can still go ahead and do a homing attack, or he can do a stomp or whatever after he reaches and goes above the ledge of where the wall was, to make him go into a free falling animation. And now, thanks to the speed shift that I introduced also in this video, what you would also be able to do, which I think would be really sick, is that if you run up certain walls, you would be able to use your speed shift ability where you start, slowing down time so you can change Sonic's trajectory. So let's say if there is a little ledge that stops on the wall so he wouldn't be able to go any higher, and he would just hit the wall and then he would fall down. If you use your speed shift ability while on the wall, you can then start running on the wall left or right by speed shifting him to then go along that wall. Now, I don't think I need to explain or tell you how cool that would be, because we have things like Sonic CD with the opening intro of him just doing all this cool stuff where he goes around the canyon, up and around that, and he does all the speed, and it's like, whoa, he does all these jumps and cool stuff by just running up it. Now, a lot of Sonic games could have that, and I really would like it to have that. Can you imagine just having a sequence in a Sonic game where, you're doing this really cool platforming, you're jumping, you head off a spring onto this platform, and then you run, and then you realize there's no more ground, but you see this back wall on the side of the area, and then instead of thinking you're going to fall to your death, all you would have to do is wall dash, and then you use your speed shift to be able to then run along that wall until you can reach the next safe destination. Because there's been plenty of Sonic games where you're going on this wall and then you're doing this cool scene where it automatically walks you across or dashes you across to get to that section. But what if you just do it on your own? Because honestly, for a new Sonic 3D platformer, you can keep his homing attack and his light ring dash and all that stuff that still can be sometimes automated. But having this extra little bit of just control over his speed and how you can maintain it by just holding the ZL or ZR for left or right, and then just being able to use that to control your speed and also control getting different types of momentum jumps, or being able to just prepare yourself for things that, before you would have to either hope that it's automated or you would just be privy to it, so you had to react at, a super speedy time. just being able to have that extra control, I think, would go a long way for making a cooler and even more interesting experience to the Sonic the Hedgehog games. Alright, so Tails Miles Per Hour is a character whose natural capabilities both as an intelligent boy wonder who can create basically anything out of nothing, just like Dr. Robotnik, but also having the capability to fly with his two tails to keep up with even Sonic the Hedgehog. He's an impressive character who over the years really hasn't gotten too many new traits over the past couple of games, because obviously not only because he hasn't been playable, but also just due to the fact that, you know, he has his tricks that he usually does and stuff that he's good at, but it hasn't really evolved from that. The last time we actually seen Tails in action in a platforming-like sense was from Sonic Adventure 1, where he had, you know, his tail attack, where he could go ahead and spin his tails multiple times to attack, to, you know, having jet shoes to let him fly farther. But for himself, I think we should implement a little bit more of just his regular raw power with technology, along with also enhancing his ability to fly. So, to be 100% clear, Tails in this game does not have infinite flying, but in a sense he will. First of all, the one big thing that you can make the Tails for this upcoming Sonic game that I've been like theorizing in my own head for an ability that he could have. Well, first of all, we're gonna have to start at the basics. Flight gauge. Please have a flight gauge for your character. I'm not saying that it's not something you need to implement, but being able to have a clear time for people to know how long your character can use their ability of flight in a video game where it's going to be arcadey and getting to point A and to point B would be wonderful. It will also help talking about just the ability of not only his flight, but also being able to calculate distances that he can reach, also better gauge whether to use his flight all at once or wait a little bit while flying, and so on and so forth. So here are some of the things that I personally, when I was thinking about some new movesets for Tails, that he could implement. So Tails, or Miles Tails Per Hour, had a video game spin-off called Tails Sky Patrol. Now this is kind of taking a little bit off of what this is, not completely, but I thought it would be cool to have. So you know how in the Sonic Adventure 1 games, where when you get to play as him, he could fly around and then he could like go into these big rings that were ominously in the sky? So I took that idea but made these little things that were a little smaller, but also something that would be more, you know, useful for Tails as a character. So we got these thing called air launchers. So basically in Tails Sky Patrol, there's some of the things that when you use your ring, Tails would latch onto, and then it would be able to move him or direct his flight in certain ways. So basically these Tails launchers would be able, if you landed near them or went flying towards them, Tails would then do an animation where he grabs onto these launchers. Think of it like holding back a slingshot. And so when you hold back on the directional pad on the, you know, control stick, when you hold backwards, it's going to start charging up the how much distance he's going to get, and it's going to show the angle of which he's going to get launched off in. Now again, you don't even need to hold it back all the way. The longer you hold it, the farther you're going to go. But if you just tap and release it, it also just instantly taps you off of the launcher. Now I thought this would be a great way to implement the fact that, you know, he is flying, but he can use his strengths from his flight into using his tails to not only recharge himself, but then also launch him in a different direction really fast if you know what you're doing when going into a stage. And using the flick would just allow you to be able to, you know, completely just go from one obstacle to another without having to take too many times where you have to stop. Also just making it a very convenient way for, like, let's say there's a section where Tails has to fly through the specific section to reach or access a point that most other characters couldn't reach because they don't have flight. So to make that capable for him, you would put these launchers there to, like, let's say there was crushing tiles or a crushing section where if he flies through, he can get to this really cool area that allows him to gain, like, a lot of distance comparative to the other characters. By using these launchers, he can hold them in place so he can wait and charge and then launch himself forward afterwards, and that's pretty cool. And there's two variants. There's the orange variant, which will be the regular variant, which is the one that you'll see most of the time, and the blue variant. And the blue variant will automatically give you the max amount of speed regardless if you tap. If you tap on the other one, you're going to get a bit of momentum on the orange one, but not as much as you would get on the blue one. Because the blue one, automatically, once you let go, will make you go at full speed when you're first ascending with his flight. His next move that I also thought of that would be very cool for Tails to have is a power dive. So, as we already discussed, I wanted to have a flight meter to be able to tell and distinguish when Tails is going up or down, or when he's going to be running out of juice. So if you wanted to let go of the flight button, you could then let go so you can regain a little bit of air as he slowly starts falling to the ground. If he uses up all of his meter, obviously, he's just going to fall to the ground naturally, because he won't have any extra energy to spare. But using the power dive feature, it will send the Tails down at a 45-degree angle, and when he touches the ground, instead of doing like, let's say, a drop dash like Sonic, instead he lands on the ground very powerfully, and it creates a gust of wind that basically destroys all objects around him in a certain area. Basically, think about the tail attack, but having larger range and only when he lands from using the power dive. The also benefit of having the power dive is when you're using his flight controls and you use power dive in midair, you can cancel out of it after a certain amount of distance he falls to then regain not only a little bit of air time in the air, but also to save some of your flight. So to be able to go down in a direct 45-degree angle from where you're going to regain a bit of flight, also change your trajectory, and then to go back into flying upwards would be a very cool and I think very beneficial thing for Tails to have to stand him out against, you know, Sonic, Knuckles, and Amy. The Cyclone Shot. The Cyclone Shot would be a new thing that would be kind of like a homing attack for Tails, but it's more just a lock-on shot that he can shoot at enemies that will create a gust of air after defeating an enemy by shooting them. Now, this has functionality in many ways. So when you go ahead and use this Cyclone Shot, you be suspended in midair until you shoot your shot, and then it will go towards the enemy and hit it. And as soon as it makes impact and destroys the enemy, a now pool of air will be made in that position where the enemy was. Flying into it will give you back 25% of your air mobility, which is your flight gauge, and then also just allows you to hover in that space before moving on. Now, again, this ability is supposed to be a homing attack that not supposed to be for chaining necessarily, but also just being used for making pockets of air so Tails can regain some of his flight, you know, by just going inside of them. Which would be a very unique take on the whole homing attack sort of ordeal, because Tails might not need a homing attack onto a whole chain of enemies. He may just need one enemy so he can continue to fly or get to a safe platform, because you might not be able to reach just by flying, so you're going to have to use your charge shot, which makes him hold his position in air for a moment as he shoots the enemies, to then fly into that pocket of air that will give him a little bit of height and allow him to reach his destination safely. Now, I really thought that was probably one of the most interesting ones out of the three abilities that I gave Tails, because, again, I want to make, if we were making a new 3D archaic like Sonic game where it's like getting to point A to point B, the whole goal for Tails, I think, should be allowing him to stay airborne as much as possible, because, again, that's his whole thing. He can fly, and he's pretty good on the ground, but a lot of his grounded stuff would be reflected by the fact that his two tails are pushing him forward. But really, what you should be doing is using his flight and benefits of being able to stay in the air longer. And I think that's what we would do for Tails if we were to make him in a new version of a archaic, sorry, not archaic, but arcade-like Sonic game where we have a point A to point B. Knuckles the Echidna. Or as I used to say as a kid, Knuckles the Enchilada, but we don't need to talk about that. But Knuckles the Echidna is usually different from Sonic and Tails of him being a little bit heavier, him not being able to, you know, be as fast as Sonic, but being able to break through certain, you know, unique areas, either because he's stronger, or, you know, in this case, we have some new movesets that will help complement, you know, how he played in both the Adventure 1 and Adventure 2 games that allows him to still be able to platform, while still having a more unique spin on his actual traversal of levels. So let's go ahead and start with Knuckles' Dreadlock Skull. or as I just called it, the Dreadlock Fall. So, we already know that Knuckles can glide, because we've seen it in both Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and even in the regular Genesis games, or original Genesis games, I should phrase myself differently. Knuckles has the capability of, flying / gliding. As long as he climbs up walls, he can then glide off them, and then he can go for a certain amount of distance as he slowly descends. Now, I just wanted to change a little bit of how his glide works. If you hold the jump button, if you're gliding and then hold the jump button and then let go of the analog stick, she shouldn't be able to move anymore, and he should be suspended in midair and do a very slight, but, momentarily just being able to drift slowly down with his dreadlocks still. Now, the only reason I have this ability as a thing is because I think how his, gliding should work in a platformer game, at least, is that if you hold the direction, he's obviously going to go in whatever direction you're holding, right? So, if you don't hold the control stick, you can be able to then just let him glide in place for a little while. He's going to slowly descend still like he would regularly. But if you use your camera, you can be able to change, change the layout of or change your camera view to be able to see where you're going. And then if you hold the joystick again after changing wherever camera view you needed to face to be able to then glide to, he would then go back into his gliding animation and then descend a lot faster. Again, the thing with the Dreadlock Fall is that there has been moments in Sonic, both movies and comics, where he's just been able to just glide, like in midair, not even moving forward, just being able to just glide slowly down. A good example also, I think, would be the Sonic AOV movie. I think I said that wrong. I'm sorry. But also, a little bit in Sonic Rider Zero Gravity as well. Because again, I think that's something that isn't super utilized, is that the fact that he technically can still glide, even if he's not, he can just suspend himself in air because of the wind underneath of his locks. But hey, again, you guys can sound down in the comments if you think that's a good idea or ability for that he should have. Because honestly, at this point, when he's gliding, I don't think it should be a fully committed thing that you just keep going. He should be able to just stop himself in midair. He's obviously still going to descend, but it's not going to be as fast or, as effective as, just being able to glide with how he usually does. Because him using his horizontal glide will always make him descend faster because he's traveling a distance, which is making, the air around him go and allow him to fall faster but move faster as well. Alright, so this is then coming down to his next ability, which, if you ever played Sonic Adventure 1, he has these things called the Power Knuckles that turn his regular boxing mitts yellow. It does not do that in this game, but if you are in midair or near some enemies, and if you charge the attack button, or if you charge the action button on the ground, he will start glowing with some energy. What this allows you to do is basically do a, what we call the light speed attack for Sonic and Shadow in SA2, and I guess in SA1 for Sonic. This would allow Knuckles to do that same charge attack, but it has a different actual unique and benefit in this game. So you know how we already have the ability to homing attack. Knuckles does not have a homing attack ability. He would glide into enemies like regular and be able to get a little bit of air off of hitting an enemy and bouncing off of them, and then keep that momentum flying forward. But if you need to do a thing where you need to use an enemy to chain up a combo, or if you want to use an enemy to be able to get a faster glide than usual, this comes in handy by using this charge ability while in air, and then when you get near an enemy, Knuckles will homing attack onto each enemy. The final enemy will launch him up into the air a significant amount. He does like a double hand slam onto that enemy, pushing him upwards like he does with his unique action in Sonic Adventure 2, where if you spin the circle and then press the B button, he goes "Shia!" and he flies upwards into the air. But then automatically afterwards, he does a gliding animation reminiscent to Sonic Adventure 3, where he glides with one hand out and with one of his fists going out and gliding really fast for the rest of the duration of the level or wherever he's going towards. So basically, just imagine this, okay? We'll just break it down step by step. He hits an enemy with this move. Depending on how many enemies there are, he'll hit 1, he'll hit 2, he'll hit 3, or he'll just hit the 1. Then he'll go up into that animation where he spirals up and gets him a lot of vertical height, and then his horizontal speed now when he uses his his one fist glide will be sped up by quite a margin, so he'll be able to travel a lot of distance faster, just for the fact, but though he'll be able to descend just as fast. But also this has a second benefit, which is why I'm going to talk about it now. Knuckles also has the ability to burrow underground. You know, just like he has in every, like, media with Knuckles in it, where he's like, oh, I can dig underground and then I can pop up. So, Knuckles' ability to burrow is either when you jump in midair and then press a certain action button, or if you're in that animation that I told you before, when he does the one fist pose, the one fist gliding animation, when he hits the ground after either hitting the action button, or doing the special animation that I told you about, he will instantly burrow underground in certain sections. Some walls are obviously solid in Sonic games, but there's definitely going to be some cases where there's gates or there's like little fences that instantly, if Knuckles does a burrowing animation, instead of having to find an alternate route like maybe Sonic, Tails, or Amy would, he could just instantly go underneath of it and burrow for a short time, and then he can pop himself back up and then can either continue running, or if you keep holding the button down, he will do again the animation we told you before, where he burrows up very high and then will continue to glide afterwards. Now, of course, this allows him not only to, pass through obstacles, but also protects himself from most dangerous moves or crushing things, minus a few things, such as if an enemy has an earthquaking move or something that literally affects the bottom of the ground, he will get hit by it. And he will be dug up from the ground immediately and then lose his rings if that happens. But, I think that would be a really cool way to spice up the thing with Knuckles and him having unique areas that he can go through, just by having places that he can basically access without being gated off like other characters. Of course, he'd still have his ability to be like, oh, if there's like these rock formations, he'd still be able to use his action button to punch through certain places and also get through that way. Along with his glide, if he uses that glide and he hits using his one-handed glide, he will automatically break through that sort of structure to then keep himself going, which is really cool. It seems like Amy Rose is here. The last truly time that we played her and she had a moveset built for 3D actual environments and, platforming and stuff, I would personally say was Sonic Adventure. Even though I know that she existed in Sonic, both Heroes and Sonic 06, I think the real crux of her, like 3D platforming was made from, the lovely instance in Adventure, and I'm going to be taking some things from also Sonic Heroes as well. So let's not dawdle on Amy Rose. Let's actually talk about what we could do to make Amy Rose a more interesting character and unique from both Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Or all three of them, I guess I should say. So, unlike most of the other characters in this game, Amy has a triple jump. Amy has a triple jump just due to the fact that when she jumps from off the ground, she'll be able to get more height, because it'll automatically do a hammer jump or a hammer flip from the Sonic Adventure game when she does that. Her other two jumps aren't as big as like the first initial jump, but because of that, she has a highest jump height than any character in this game. Just due to the fact that anytime she's running and jumping off the ground, she will always go at maximum height. With her other jumps allowing her to get more horizontal distance, because they aren't meant to be going vertically upwards as much as they are supposed to help her be able to go through gaps a lot easier than the other characters. Now, also that being said, what could make Amy really good? Even though she isn't as fast as Sonic, she does have a boost like state. And you know how in Sonic Frontiers, boosting now doesn't allow you to automatically hit enemies? Well, with Amy that doesn't apply because she has a hammer. She will automatically swing at enemies when she's boosting and not have to worry about colliding with enemies, because as long as she's using her boost, her hammer will be out and she will automatically swing and defeat enemies in her path. Now, again, it doesn't go as fast as Sonic's, mind you, but the fact that she's able to just go ahead and hit through any enemies that are in her way makes her a very, very scary person, because she can speedrun without having to worry about, accidentally taking hits or damage off of a stray enemy just being in your path, and allows her to just kind of keep going. Well, being able to maintain a lot of her speed. Now, different from Sonic, her homing attack is going to be called the Hammer Throw. The Hammer Throw is going to be a unique type of lock-on homing attack where she throws the hammer and then she's able to teleport herself to it. Now again, I'm making some liberties here because it's mostly just like her hopping to where the hammer was, but the difference between her homing attack, Tails' homing attack, and Sonic's. Sonic is the continuous one that will continue to go as long as you're pressing the button, and you have a lock-on reticle. Tails' will only shoot one enemy at a time and then will create wind pockets. And for Amy's, when you do your lock-on, it actually keeps her suspended in the air, and you can cancel into a jump immediately afterwards. So when she goes, after you throw the hammer, as she's moving towards it, you will automatically be able to jump out of it and continue to keep having, momentum forward. Kind of how, like, recently in Sonic Frontiers, you have located, or we have discovered that, the boost canceling is a thing. Think about it kind of like that, where when Amy locks onto a homing attack, she does one enemy at a time, and that you can use the first two, like if there's a chain of enemies, you can use the first two as a regular lock on, but it goes slower. But then the third one, if you wanted to hit the person with the hammer, as you're moving forward as she's moving or leaping forward to then grab her hammer, you can actually cancel the animation to do your double and then triple jump afterwards. Alright, and then another move that I had was the Insta Flip. When you're near an enemy, if you just run up and press an action button, she'll get a lot more air off of hitting an enemy or a spring. So this automatically just works in the way that you would expect it would. So let's say if you're running up towards an enemy and you then press an action button, either in the air or on the ground, if you hit a spring or an enemy, you will get boosted up quite a lot higher than if you just do the regular triple jump by running and then jumping off the ground. This also just gives her extra ways to be able to reach heights and reach places that you normally wouldn't be able to reach with either like Sonic. Well, really just Sonic, because Sonic is more grounded in this game just due to the fact that you want to keep him on the ground and also just have a way to keep your speed and momentum as fast as possible almost all the time. So allowing her to be able to do this insta flip by, hitting an enemy that's on the ground or hitting a spring, so then she goes into the air a lot higher, so then you can use her other two jumps to then, safely glide yourself to the ground, would be really nice. And then lastly, one of her abilities that I would bring back from Sonic Heroes is the Hammer Tornado. Now, again, this has two different purposes that I'm going to tell you about right now. By using her Tornado Hammer, she has the ability to create a gust of wind right in front of her, just like in Sonic Heroes. Either you can do this by jumping and pressing a certain action button, or on the ground you can just press a certain action button and it will also cause this effect. This will usually homing attack to the nearest enemy, but if there is no enemies, it will just go a set amount of distance forward, and then will create a small pocket of air. Now, as you would probably guess, this also small pocket of air will stay there for, let's say, about 5 to 6 seconds. Amy can then run into it, and it will always lift her up, and it will give you this really cute animation of her getting lifted up by it. And then as she's getting lifted up by it, you are then able to, if you still have momentum, or if you use boost while getting into it, you're able to get a lot more horizontal distance on your jumps, just by using this one little cool trick. And then you're still able to use your other two jumps, still allowing you to use triple jump, and reach even larger gaps in levels that even Sonic probably can't reach, even using the ability to run up walls with his wall dash. So that's how I would make Amy as a new 3D platformer and somebody who finally gets a time to shine and have their own moveset in a new Sonic game that's built like the old Genesis games from getting to point A to point B. And yeah, that's basically it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is just one of the many things that I've been kind of thinking about by myself, especially now that Sonic Frontiers has confirmed that they're going to have a section, probably which was cut out of the game in the first place, just as Sonic got turned into, the digitized version of being too filled with the negative aspects of cyberspace, right? I decided that it probably would be cool to just talk about and theorize cool things that they could do with the Sonic characters now that they're being reintroduced, and give them their own personalities with their gameplay style, with also being able to enhance or already, reinforce the super cool traits that each of these characters have and use them in a new modern way that allows you to have more freedom and expression of how you use these characters. Obviously, I think, like, I know I didn't say this, but I think honestly Sonic should have the ability to do either the bounce bracelet or, you know, obviously the drop dash still, and still be able to use the wall dash. They're just two separate things, of course. And, you know, being able to have the spin dash might be nice, but also just being able to boost is another thing he has. So it really just depends on your preference at the end of the day. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, and if you want to see more content like this, make sure to comment down below and also subscribe, because definitely I am more and more interested in talking about like hypotheticals of like making movesets or very interesting things for characters in these video games. The next time we come back for another video, I hope that you guys are ready to enjoy, because I have plenty more ideas and plenty more videos just to talk about and discuss more video games. Because I have been Multi126789, other known as Multi-Man, and I'll catch you lovely chows of the internet next time for another video. So ciao ciao, until then.